After that, Talion's teacher Salus agreed to train Rico as well, deciding that tomorrow morning he would take her out and commence the same first day training that Talion had undergone. Talion, of course, wanted to go as well and make sure that Rico would be okay. However, Salus once again told him not to, that keeping his distance at this moment would be best, as he didn't need to intervene in the training. Talion was somewhat worried after hearing that Rico would simply die if she got far enough away from him. But Silas reassured him that the distance that they could get from their masters was quite vast. It wasn't as if they would die if you went next door to get a cup of sugar. The process required a great deal of distance, and that distance be maintained for a deal of time. Over short periods, it wasn't bad, so Rico would be fine going to train with him. After which, Rico and everyone else spent the rest of the night getting acquainted with one another. Talion's mother seemed to be quite captured with Rico, and actually spent a great deal of the rest of the day having conversation with her. Her mother's questions seemed much more pertinent than Talion's when it came to Rico herself. For example, his mother seemed to focus on the way that Rico spoke. After asking, she found out that Rico spoke in that manner because Eco were effectively uneducated. Because of the outlook on Eco, it was considered a waste of time to expend anything on them, including knowledge. So they were never taught anything, and simply had to gain whatever understanding they could based on interactions with other Eco, which resulted in, well, less of an education. Rico herself couldn't read and had never actually seen a book. So, Melody decided that simply wouldn't do. And among the other things that Melody decided to take under her wing, teaching Rico basic reading and mathematics was something that she decided was absolutely necessary for the girl, as well as learning a much more proper tone of speech and etiquette about conversation. Talion's mother was in fact paying Rico a great deal of attention, and even decided to begin sewing Rico some clothing, as the tattered rags of clothes that she currently wore were not something that Melody thought were appropriate. She would need to be given better clothing. And so Melody commenced with preparing her some, whilst beginning to instruct Rico on basic things like spelling, first teaching her the alphabet, which Rico actually began to catch on to with a great deal of ease. She was in fact very excited about it, saying that her master's mother honored her. Rico never expected to be taught to read. This was a great privilege for her, as she said. Despite the attention that Rico was getting from his mother, Talion didn't experience any kind of jealousy. He in fact rather enjoyed it, as if his mother suddenly adopted a new child into the family. His mother had told him stories about her first child, that she was in fact a girl. So she did originally have dreams of raising a girl of her own. Perhaps that's part of the reason that she suddenly becomes so attached to Rico. Vera was actually exceptionally surprised after returning to the home, finding a new child there, and having to be brought up to speed. Vera had actually begun spending time gathering physical resources, magical knowledge and books, ingredients for specific types of magic, and supplies should they need to make a rapid retreat. Taleon did still have the possibility of people finding out where he was and coming seeking this young prince. So they would need to be prepared in that instant, ready to leave at a moment's notice and not have to do without in the meantime. So there they all were, at this point, having dinner. Melody trying to go about teaching Eco basic ABCs, whilst stitching her some clothing. She had actually improved her skills in making clothing, as her mother had more experience in the matter and had been teaching her. So, with the new knowledge, she also had undertaken starting to make Taleon some more clothes, but felt that Rico's tattered rags were more of a priority to replace. So, as they sat there, having dinner, everyone else eating except for Melody, who had already gotten her fill while cooking the food, and Rico, of course, who didn't eat, so was looking at a simple ABC book that his mother made for him when he was a child, flipping through one page after another and reading the letters over and over again. Salus was sitting at the table, just finishing the last of his bowl, a hearty rabbit stew today. Hey, teacher. So, when exactly am I going to be learning to use demon magic? He said, looking towards Salus, with a great deal of hopeful attitude. I mean, I finished my first day of training, right? That's the, scary stuff. So, now that we're done with that, I can start learning magic, right? Well, your instruction is going to begin, yes. However, I must warn you that magic isn't exactly my forte, Salus replied to Taleon. Look, I do know some measure of demonic magic, but most of it is very simple. My own abilities are far more effective. You must understand that there's a range of demonic magic that can be used. And when it comes to magic, once again, it's a matter of resource. You're able to learn what you can actually get a hold of. You have to acquire the materials that teach you the magic first. And I wasn't exactly raised in a place where resources were abundant. So I do know some magic spells, but in reference to your own abilities, they'll be quite weak. I'll teach them to you, of course. They can be useful. They'll most likely be more useful for you. My abilities sort of make them, well, useless in comparison to what I'm able to produce with my fog. The spells that I know are next to nothing, basically canceled out. But you don't have the ability to magically create things with fog whenever you want. So I surmise that they'll most likely be of more use to you. So what exactly would you be training me in, if it's not magic? Listen, us demons work differently than human beings. Human beings are required to use their energies in order to cast magic. But those energies are basically useless otherwise, unless they possess some sort of natural ability or gift to use the energy in some other format. But we demons aren't limited like that. Our demonic energy can be used through our natural abilities and in other ways that make it a great deal more dangerous than the energy produced by human beings. We don't require training in magic in order to master our demonic abilities and utilize demonic energy for attack, defense, and things of that nature. Primarily, what you're going to be learning from me is a combination of combat skill and mastery of demonic energy. Specifically, how to make best use of that energy. The combination of gaining skill, combat situations, and knowledge of how to utilize your demonic energy will make you vastly more powerful. It will, of course, take time and effort, but the results should speak for themselves. For a moment, Taleon looked down, seeming, well, a bit disappointed. "Hey, what's the look for?" Silas said, looking at Taleon, seeming a bit upset. "Well, it's just that I thought I was going to learn magic. But you say you only have a few spells." "Ugh, don't worry, kid. If you get strong enough, and we manage to, well, reacquaint you with your family. Even if we didn't reacquaint you with your family, your strength and abilities would more than allow you to cut some deals or get what you need from other demons in terms of casting magic. Meaning, once you're strong enough, you can gain the knowledge to begin learning about magic on your own." "Okay," Taleon said. "But if you can gain knowledge about magic after you gain strength, by cutting deals with people in exchange for the knowledge, then why don't you know more magic?" he said, looking to Silas. Okay. Well, let me put it this way. There's sort of a balance between skill sets. Some people have natural ability with specific things, and it's always important to focus on your natural abilities. If one has a natural aptitude for something, it only stands to reason that they would put a great deal of focus into mastering that aptitude, because that will be their greatest strength. But how much focus you put into something usually depends on how good you are at it. And just being honest, magic isn't something that I really have a great deal of skill in. Even the few magical spells that I know were very difficult for me. Demonic magic requires the reconstitution of demonic energy, breaking it down into multiple different subcategories of energy, and then utilizing them in order to cast the spell. And casting works much differently for demons than it does for humans. For example, human beings who cast magic, otherwise known as mages, like your mother and grandmother, learn the magical processes required for that. But those magical processes are vastly different from those that demons use to cast magic. Our energy is much different from theirs, and thus a different type of method is required. In fact, it actually requires an entirely different set of knowledge. We demons, when it comes to casters, actually fall into categories. Basically, there are multiple classes of caster within those who know how to utilize demonic magic. Each one having a specialty, a type of magic that they, in particular, are suited for. And learning any type of ability outside of that basic natural acquaintance is exceptionally difficult. It can be done, but the cost is usually so great that there's simply no point in it. To give you a short example, one of The type of categories that your magic in particular, or at least which magic you favor, could fall into, is known as destruction magic. This is actually one of the most popular. By that I mean most demons who seek magical knowledge and ability want their abilities to fall under the destruction category because, for obvious reasons, it's the most destructive, allowing one to do combat most effectively, summoning balls of fire, lightning, basically destruction. The ability to directly channel one's demonic energy into destructive casting, things that will damage and destroy. But this is only one of the categories that your natural magical acquaintance could be in. If destruction isn't the one that you have an acquaintance with, then it's difficult to gain knowledge in it or perform the abilities. It comes at a greater cost than if it were the one that you were naturally bound to. Okay, Taleon said. So, if everyone has these specialties, well, what's mine? In fact, what's yours? That's actually the reason why my magical abilities are, well, shabby. My magical speciality, if you can believe it, is actually illusion. I mean, really, what a kick in the nads. What? What's wrong with illusion? Don't you get it, kid? My abilities as a demon are illusion. If my magical abilities are illusion as well, then what do you think that means? It means that for me, using magic and using my natural abilities basically amount to the same thing, with the sole difference being that using my natural abilities is actually a much easier thing for me to do. In other words, pressing my skill set into magic would basically amount to next to nothing. It's completely superfluous. Like having a third arm. It's just sort of there for no reason. It wouldn't help me to gain knowledge and experience into illusion magic. It's simply more effective if I focus my energies into my natural abilities, as they require less focus and intent in order to utilize. Oh, I think I get it, Taleon said. Oh, your magical nature, the one that you'd be most able to master, is basically superfluous, like a vestigial appendage. Oh, good word use, Taleon, his mother said from across the table, casting him a smile. Thanks, Mom, Taleon replied as he went back to trying to think over this whole magic thing. If all demons had a special category of magic that they fall into and can learn the easiest, then what is his?